Hi, second grade. Today we are going to finish the book Mr. Burke is Berserk. We are on chapter 4, Three Little Letters. The three little letters were C-U-T. Cut! Mayor Hubble shouts into the microphone. We need to cut the amount of money we are spending so we can balance the budget. Just say the word cut seems to make Mayor Hubble's eyes light up with excitement. He had a crazy look on his face, the kind of look that evil geniuses in movies have when they explain how they're going to take over the world. The first thing we're going to cut, Mr. Hubble told us, are the art and music programs. So long, said Miss Hannah, taking her rolling suitcase. I'm out of here. Right behind you, said Mr. Loring. But we love art and music, shouted the kids. You kids are here to learn, said the mayor, not to sit around drawing pictures and singing silly songs. That's just a big waste of money. Everybody looked really sad when Miss Hannah and Mr. Loring walked out of the multi-purpose room. The next thing we need to cut are school supplies, said Mayor Hubble. So, from now on, we're going to stop buying glue sticks, rulers, erasers, tape, and markers. You can have one pencil per classroom. That's off the wall, yelled Mrs. Small. Oh, stop whining, said Mayor Hubble. This will improve everyone's schoolwork. If the students only have one pencil, they'll make fewer mistakes. What about crayons? Asked Miss Holly, our Spanish teacher. No more crayons, said Mayor Hubble. You can melt down candles and make them into crayons. That will save us a lot of money. That's loopy, yelled Mr. Rupee. The mayor pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket to remind him of the other things he was about to cut. Starting today, he announced, I'm turning off the water fountains in the hallways. You know what the biggest waste of water in the world is? Water fountains. The water shoots right out of them. That's bizarre, yelled Miss Lazar, our custodian. Oh, give me a break, Mayor Hubble said. It's not like people need water to live or anything. And I know you kids just go to the water fountains when you don't want to sit in your class. You're not fooling anybody. Well, he was right about that. That's daffy, yelled Miss Jaffe. From now on, the mayor continued, there'll be no more toilet paper in the bathrooms. That stuff costs way too much money. You're getting rid of toilet paper? Shouted Alexia. What are we supposed to use? Post-it notes, said the mayor. That's loony, yelled Mr. Cooney, the school nurse. And disgusting. From now on, the teachers will have to have their pay cut in half, the mayor continued. You teachers make way too much money. Teachers get paid? That was a new one for me. I thought they just came to school every day because they had no place else to go. But we hardly make any money as it is, yelled Miss Yonkers, our computer teacher. Do you expect the teachers... What do you teach? Mayor Hubble asked Miss Yonkers. I'm the computer teacher. Well, you're fired, said the mayor. I'm replacing you with a computer. A computer should be able to teach a computer class much better than a human being anyways. And computers don't whine and complain like other people. He's off his rocker, yelled Mr. Docker, our science teacher. You crybaby teachers should be thankful you have jobs at all, said the mayor. Oh, and I want the coffee machine and the hot tub removed from the teacher's lounge. We don't have a hot tub in the teacher's lounge, said Miss Jaffe. You don't? Said the mayor. Then put a hot tub in the teacher's lounge and then we'll take it out. We have no money to spend on silly things like hot tubs for teachers. He's loco, said Miss Coco, the gifted and talented teacher. Mayor Hubble was getting more and more excited as he talked about all the cuts he was going to make. After we get rid of the hot tub in the teacher's lounge, he said, get rid of the tables and chairs in there and sell them on eBay. Do you expect the teachers to sit on the floor? Asked Mr. Granite. Yes, said Mayor Hubble. It'll be like a picnic every day. You like picnics, don't you? Who doesn't like a picnic? He's gone mad, said Dr. Brad, the school counselor. Come to think of it, said the mayor, why do you teachers need a lounge anyways? You don't have time for lounging around in hot tubs and having picnics. This is a school, not some beach resort. But we don't have a hot tub, yelled Miss Laney, our speech teacher. Not anymore you won't, said the mayor. Not after I get rid of the one we're putting in. All these cuts will help us balance the budget. When the voters see how much money I save, they'll vote to re-elect me in November. Are you going to take a pay cut too? Asked Miss Jaffe. Don't be silly, said the mayor. I'm giving myself a raise for coming up with these great ideas to save money. That makes no sense, yelled Officer Spence, our security guard. We need pencils, glue sticks, and water fountain and toilet paper. We need tables and chairs. We need all those things that you're going to cut. Yeah, shouted all the teachers. If Mr. Klutz was here, he would never allow any of this, shouted Mr. Granite. That's right, shouted the teachers. Well, Mr. Klutz isn't here, is he? Said Mayor Hubble. He's at principal camp. Everybody was really mad. You never believe who poked his head into the door at that moment. Nobody. Poking your head into doors is dumb. I thought we went over that in the last chapter. But you'll never believe who poked his head into the doorway. No, it wasn't Mr. Klutz. Nice try. It was Mr. Burke, the groundskeeper. Ah, mowed the lawn, said Mr. Burke. You're fired. Trimmed the bushes. Been busier than a one-armed man hanging wallpaper, and I'm plumb tuckered out. What do you want me to do next? Next? Asked the mayor. The next thing you can do is go home. There's no money in the budget for a groundskeeper anymore, so you're fired. Have a nice day. I think that was the moment when Mr. Burke went berserk. Chapter 5, The Class Pencil. None of us could believe that Mr. Burke had been fired. Who would mow the lawn? Who would trim the bushes? Who would rake the leaves in the fall and shovel the snow in the winter? Mr. Burke didn't say a word. He just stood up and walked slowly out the doorway. When we got back to class, I looked out the window and saw Mr. Burke sitting all by himself on the monkey bars in the playground. It was sad. Okay, it's time for math, said Mr. Granite. Get your pencils and turn to page 23 in your math book. Do the first problem and write the answer in your notebook. Ugh, I hate math. I don't have a pencil, said Ryan. Me neither, said Michael. My pencil is gone, said Neil, the nude kid. Somebody stole my pencil too, said Alexia. Somebody took all of our pencils, said Andrea. It was true. All of our pencils were gone. Our glue sticks, tape, erasers, rulers were gone too. Somebody stole our stuff, I shouted. Who steals school supplies? Asked Andrea. Mayor Hubble, said Mr. Granite. He's probably going to sell our school supplies on eBay so he can balance the budget. Wow, I said. He didn't waste any time. Mayor Hubble is mean, said Emily. That may be true, but we still have to do math. There's one pencil on my desk. You'll just have to share the class pencil. Can I use the pencil first? Asked Little Miss Perfect. I already know the answer to the first problem. Andrea always knows the answer to every problem. I hate her. I want the class pencil first, I shouted. Please, Mr. Granite? I didn't even want the dumb pencil. I just didn't want little Miss Know-It-all to get it. Andrea and AJ may share the class pencil, then pass it down to the next person. Ooh, Ryan said, AJ and Andrea are going to share the class pencil. They must be in love. When are you going to get married? Asked Michael. If those guys weren't my best friend, I would hate them. Andrea snatched the pencil from Mr. Granite before I could get it. I grabbed the other end of the pencil. I get to use the class pencil first, Arlo, said Andrea. No, I shouted to her. We're supposed to share it. Me? No, me. Both of you. Knock it. Mr. Granite didn't get a chance to finish his sentence. Because at that moment, the weirdest thing in the history of all world happened. Snap. The class pencil broke in half. Look what you did, Arlo, shouted Andrea. You broke the class pencil. I didn't break it, I shouted back at her. You broke it. I did not. Did too. Now we can't do math, said Michael. Yay, said Ryan. No math. Mr. Granite, Arlo broke the class pencil on purpose so he wouldn't have to do math, yelled Andrea. I did not. Did too. Arlo started hitting me, and I hit her back. Stop, shouted Mr. Granite. I will not have violence in my class. What do you have against violins? I asked. Not violins, Arlo, said Andrea, rolling her eyes. Violins. Oh, that sounds a lot like violins to me. Forget the class pencil, said Mr. Granite. We'll use the whiteboard. You kids will not get out of doing math this time. I had to admit that breaking the class pencil to get out of doing math wasn't a bad idea. I wish I had thought of it, but that gave me another idea. Mr. Granite, I said, can I go get a drink of water? Mayor Hubble turned off the water fountains, he replied. Remember? Oh, yeah. May I go to the boys' room? Do you really have to go to the boys' room, AJ? Mr. Granite asked. Or are you trying to get out of math? I really have to go, I lied. Oh, well. Okay, said Mr. Granite. Here, take some post-it notes with you. I was about to walk out the doorway when the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Ring, ring, ring. It was the recess bell. Yay, no math. It was the greatest moment of my life. Mr. Burke Goes Berserk, Chapter 6. When we went to the playground for recess, two big guys were there. Hey, do you want to know the surprise ending to the story? Well, I'm not going to tell you, so nah. They were sawing off the bottom of the monkey bars. When they finished, they picked the whole thing up and started carrying it away. Where are you taking our monkey bars? I asked. To rent a monkey bars, one of the guys replied. You can rent anything. They also took away our swings, slide, climbing wall, kickball, volleyball net, soccer goals, and jump ropes. They even took the tetherball pole out of the ground. Then they threw all that stuff into a big truck and drove away. We were sad. There was nothing to do. What fun is recess if you have nothing to play with? Mayor Hubble is mean, said Andrea, and for once, I agreed with her. We wandered around the playground until we saw Mr. Burke coming out of the equipment shed. He had something in his hand. Why is he still here? Asked Andrea. Mayor Hubble fired him. What's he holding? Asked Ryan. It looks like a chainsaw, said Andrea. A chainsaw? We all started freaking out. Mr. Burke is crazy, I yelled. He must have snapped, yelled Neil, the nude kid. He's going to kill everyone in the school, yelled Ryan. It will be like that movie, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yelled Michael. Mr. Burke pulled a cord to start the chainsaw, and it made a loud noise like a motorcycle. "You've got to do something," yelled Emily. We were about to run inside and warn the teachers when Mr. Burke went over to the biggest bush in the playground. "Wait a minute," said Andrea. "He's not going to kill anybody. He's going to trim the bushes." Andrea was right, as usual. Mr. Burke started cutting the side of the big bush with the chainsaw. He carefully cut into one side, then went around to cut into the other side. "Why is he trimming?" Emily started to say. "He's not trimming," Andrea said. "He's making a sculpture. He's making a bush sculpture." She was right again. And Mr. Burke wasn't just making any sculpture. As he cut into the bush with his chainsaw, we could see he was making a sculpture of a person. As he continued cutting, we could see that person wasn't just any person. "It's Mayor Hubble," shouted Alexia. She was right, too. The bush looked just like the mayor. "Mr. Burke is weird," said Ryan. Andrea had on her worry face, so I knew she was going to say something about her mother, the psychologist. "I'm worried," she said. "My mother is a psychologist. She would say that Mr. Burke was obsessed with Mayor Hubble. We need to move on with his life and get a new job." "I agree," said Emily, who always agrees with everything Andrea says. Mr. Burke put the finishing touches on the sculpture. Then he put the chainsaw back in the shed and came out with a shovel. "What's he doing now?" asked Neil. Mr. Burke went over to where the monkey bars used to be. Then he started digging in the ground with the shovel. "See, like I told you," I said. "He must be digging up the bodies of the kids he murdered." "Arlo, stop trying to scare Emily," said Andrea. "I'm scared," said Emily. "Maybe he'll dig up some zombies," said Ryan. "They'll come back to life and chase us around the playground. And if they catch us, they'll eat our brains," Michael said. "I saw that in a movie once." Emily started freaking out. "Zombies don't eat brains, dumbhead," said Alexia. "Cannibal zombies do," I told her. "Especially cannibal zombies from outer space." "We've got to do something," yelled Emily. And then she went running away. Sheesh, what a crybaby. The rest of us kept watching Mr. Burke digging with the shovel. First he would dig one hole, then he would dig another hole nearby, then another. "I think he's looking for something," said Ryan. "Maybe he's digging up the Underground Railroad," I suggested. We had learned about that in class with Mr. Granite. "The Underground Railroad wasn't underground, Arlo," Andrea said, rolling her eyes. "Then why did they call it the Underground Railroad?" I asked. "Because it was hidden," Andrea said. "They didn't want people to know about it." "Your face should be hidden," I told Andrea. "Then we wouldn't have to look at it." "Oh, snap," said Ryan. Andrea was trying to think of something mean to say to me, but she never got the chance. Because that's when the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Mr. Burke's shovel hit something sharp. Ping! He must have broken off a piece of rock. He got down on his hands and knees and picked it up. He was looking at it carefully. Then he took a magnifying glass out of his pocket and looked through it. He turned the rock over and over in his hand. Then he stood up and yelled, "Gold!" Chapter 7. Gold Fever. "Gold!" shouted Ryan. "Gold!" shouted Michael. "Gold!" shouted Neil, the nude kid. "Gold!" I shouted. Just in case you were wondering, we were all shouting gold. Kids from every corner of the playground came running over to see us. "What's going on?" Mr. Burke found gold. Mr. Burke found gold. Mr. Burke found gold. Just in case you were wondering, lots of kids were talking about how Mr. Burke found gold. Everyone crowded around him as he held up the chunk of gold. Well, I'll be dogged, Mr. Burke said. My great-great-grandpappy lived over yonder back in '48. He told me there was a heap of gold left in the ground after the gold rush ended, and I reckon it was right here. Mrs. Jaffe came running out to the playground. What's all the fuss? She asked. Mr. Burke found a piece of gold where the monkey bars used to be. I always figured there was gold down here, he said. But I couldn't get it on account of them dang monkey bars. Is it okay with y'all if I do a little more digging out here? You betcha, said Miss Jaffe. Dig, baby, dig. Our reading specialist, Mr. Mackey, came running out of the school. He was pushing a wheelbarrow. Did someone say gold? He asked, all excited. Where did you get the wheelbarrow? Ryan asked. From Rent a Wheelbarrow, said Mr. Mackey. You can rent anything. Suddenly, the other teachers came running out of the school. Miss Coco, Miss Holly, Mr. Docker, Miss Small, all of them. They were all wearing overalls and miners' hats. Some of them were carrying pickaxes, shovels, and pans. I guess they rented them. Yee-haw, they were all shouting, gold! Don't any of you have classes to teach? Asked Andrea. Classes, shouted our librarian, Miss Roby. Who cares about classes? There's gold in them there hills, and I'm a-fixin' to fetch me some, dag nabbit, said our speech teacher, Miss Laney. Yee-haw, shouted Mr. Granite. Why is everyone suddenly talking like this is the Wild West? I asked. 'Cause we got the gold fever, young feller, said Mr. Mackey. It drives a man crazy. I tell you, crazy. I'm crazier than a run-over coon, shouted our health teacher, Miss Leakey. I'm crazier than popcorn on a hot stove, shouted Mr. Granite. Yee-haw, shouted Miss Coco. Grown-ups are weird. The teachers started digging holes all over the place and saying words I never heard of, like tarnation and varmint and ornery. Me and the other kids just watched them. At least it was better than going to class. I found me a nugget, y'all, said Miss Holly suddenly shouted. Yee-haw! A chicken nugget? I asked. No, a gold nugget. That's funny. I always thought nuggets came from chickens. We all gathered around to look at Miss Holly's nugget. Look at the way it shines, she said. That there nugget is as purty as a snake on stilts, said Mr. Roby. I reckon this may be the biggest gold strike in over 100 years, said Mr. Burke. The teachers let out a big yee-haw and started digging all over the place with even more excitement. I found one too, shouted Miss Small. So did I, said Mr. Granite. They were all uncovering gold. That's when a big black car pulled up to the playground. You'll never believe who got out of it. It was Mayor Hubble, and he was coming over. Suddenly, all the teachers stopped digging. Mayor Hubble was staring at the teachers. The teachers were staring at Mayor Hubble. The kids were all staring at the teachers and Mayor Hubble. Everybody was just staring at each other. You could hear a pin drop. Not really, but that's what everybody says when it's quiet. Nobody knows why. I was sure Mayor Hubble was going to tell them to stop digging and go back to class, but he didn't. Dig, he hollered. Keep digging. Chapter 8, Gilver. When I got to school the next day, the front door was locked. I went around to the playground. It was filled with teachers. They were digging holes with shovels, pickaxes, and all kinds of mining equipment. I met up with the guys and Alexia. Mrs. Ropey came by on a donkey. Where did you get a donkey? Alexia asked her. It's not a donkey, said Mrs. Ropey. It's a burro. His name is Jose. Where did you get a burro? Michael asked. From Rent-A-Burro. She said, you can rent anything. As we got closer, we saw the weirdest thing in the history of the world. Mr. Mackey, Mr. Burke, Mr. Docker, and Officer Spence all had long beards on their faces. None of them had beards the day before. How did you grow a beard so fast? Ryan asked Mr. Mackey. It's the gold fever, he replied, a crazy look in his eyes. It does that to a man. We sat and watched the teachers digging. They were all shouting, "Yee-haw!" and calling each other burner. That's when annoying Andrea and Emily came over. This is terrible, Andrea said. The teachers should be inside the school helping us learn things, not out here digging. That's right, said Emily. What is their problem? Can you possibly be more boring? Asked Alexia. Yeah, take a chill pill, I told Andrea. We get a day off from school. Mr. Burke seemed to know a lot about gold mining, and he was telling the teachers where to dig and what to do. I reckon we need to dig a deeper hole to get the gold, he told them. Fetch me the dynamite, fellas. They were going to blow a hole in the playground, asked Andrea. That sounds dangerous. Is violence really necessary? What do violins have to do with it? I asked. Not violins, Arlo. Violence. Mr. Burke and Mr. Mackey dug a deep hole where the monkey bars used to be and put sticks of dynamite in them. Then they stretched a wire from the hole to the other end of the playground. Y'all cover your ears now, Mr. Burke hollered, and then he yelled, Fire in the hole, and pushed down on the handle thing that looked like a bicycle pump. We all covered our ears. Boom! That was a huge blast. Rocks and dirt went flying all over the place. It was awesome. You got to see it live and in person. You should have been there. Wow, we all said, which is Mom upside down. Blowing stuff up is cool. There should be a TV channel that shows nothing but stuff being blown up all day long. The explosion blew a giant hole in the ground. The teachers all ran over yelling, Yee-haw! And climbed into the hole with their picks and axes and shovels. You kids want to come down into the mine with me and poke around? Asked Mr. Burke. Yeah, said me and the guys and Alexia. I don't want to get my school clothes dirty, said Andrea. Me either, said Emily. Could you possibly be more boring? Asked Alexia. The rest of us climbed into the mine with Mr. Burke. It was dark down there, but some of the teachers had lights on their helmets so we could see. They were digging for a long time, but nobody found any gold. Then Mr. Burke suddenly hit something sharp with his shovel. I think I found something, he said. Is it gold? I asked. No. Is it silver? Asked Alexia. No. Mr. Burke said as he looked down at the shiny thing in his hand. It's even more valuable than gold and silver. It's gliver. Gliver? Asked Ryan. I've never heard of gliver. What's gliver? Asked Neil, the nude kid. Gliver is a combination of gold and silver, Mr. Burke said excitedly. Yee-haw, shouted Mr. Mackey. It's more valuable than gold. It's more valuable than silver. It's Gilver. In case you're wondering, all the teachers were shouting Gilver. This place is filled with the stuff, said Mr. Burke. It's a bonanza. We hit pay dirt, shouted Mr. Mackey, jumping up and down, clacking his heels together. There must be millions of dollars worth of gliver down here. Billion, shouted Miss Small. Trillion, shouted Mr. Granite. Do you have any idea what this means for our school? Said Miss Jaffe. We can bring back the art and music programs. We can buy new computers and smart boards for every classroom, shouted Miss Yonkers. We can turn the water fountains back on, shouted Miss Leakey. We can buy toilet paper for the bathroom, shouted Miss Laser. Yee-haw, the rest of the teachers shouted. All of our problems were solved. Chapter 9, The Gold Rush. Teachers filled bag after bag with glitter and carried the bags out of the hole. Mr. Burke told us not to say a word about the glitter to anybody, but it didn't matter. Thanks to all the yelling and shouting, word got out. 5 minutes later, people with overalls, hard hats, and shovels were streaming onto the playground from all directions. Some of them came on dog sleds. Some were in covered wagons. I guess they rented them. The next thing we know, the playground was filled with tents and people making campfires and cooking and playing harmonicas. It was a real Kodak moment. Yee-haw, one guy said. I'm a-hankering to get me a heap of that glitter. Hey, we were here first, you no-good rascal, said Mr. Mackey. This is our glitter. Finders keepers, said another man. This is a public school, your varmint. So it's public property. Looked like a fight was going to break out. But that's when the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Channel 7 News is on the way. Channel 7 News is on the way. In case you're wondering, everybody says Channel 7 News is on the way. TVs? Cameras? Shrieked Andrea. How does my hair look? Eek, we're going to be famous, shrieked Emily. Sure enough, a few minutes later, a big van pulled up with Channel 7 News written on the side. You'll never believe who got out of the van. It was Mrs. Lilly, this reporter who helped us make a newspaper about our school. Some guys from the news van set up the equipment, and Mrs. Lilly stood next to Mr. Burke. This is Mrs. Lilly of Channel 7 News, she said into the microphone. I'm reporting live from Elementary School, where glitter, a rare combination of gold and silver, has been found in the playground. With me is Mr. Burke, the school's groundskeeper. You were the first one to discover it, Mr. Burke. Tell me, how do you feel right now? I feel like I could eat corn on the cob through a picket fence, Mr. Burke said. I beg your pardon, asked Mrs. Lilly. What I mean is, right now, I could just about hit a bull's backside with a handful of banjos. I'm sorry, I don't understand, said Miss Lilly. All I'm saying is, I feel like I could bluff a buzzard off a meat wagon right now. Huh? Said Miss Lilly. I have no idea what you're talking about. What's the matter, ma'am? Asked Mr. Burke. Don't you speak English? Miss Lilly was going to ask Mr. Burke more questions, but you never believe, in 1,000,000 years, who came running in front of the camera at that moment. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. But you have to read the next chapter first. So, nanny, nanny, boo, boo, on you. Chapter 10. Violins are bad for children. It was Mayor Hubble. He grabbed the microphone from Mrs. Lilly. His Secret Service agents shoved Mr. Burke away from the camera. I'm happy to announce, said the mayor, that all the gold and glitter found on school property belongs to the city. We will use it to balance the budget, blah, 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 blah. Create new jobs, blah, 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 blah. Fix the roads, blah, 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 blah. Cut taxes, blah, 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 blah. This great country, blah, blah, blah. And furthermore, blah, blah, blah. How long is this going to go on? Blah, blah, blah. up when it's over. He yammered on about 1,100,000 hours. I thought I was going to die of old age. In conclusion, the mayor finally said, vote for me on election day. Thank you. Mrs. Lilly and the Channel 7 guys turned off their cameras, packed up their gear, and drove away. Okay, the show's over, said Mayor Hubble. Everybody go home now. I'll take care of the liver. And all you teachers, get back to class. You should be ashamed of yourself. The Secret Service agent started to load the bags of gold and liver into the trunk of Mayor Hubble's limo. The teachers were sad. They had worked really hard to dig up the gold, and now Mayor Hubble was taking it away. We wouldn't be able to fix up the school. We wouldn't be able to bring back the art and music programs. We wouldn't have any toilet paper. Bummer in the summer. This was the worst thing to happen since TV turn-off week. We all started walking back to the school. That's when the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. In the distance, at the other end of the playground, a tall, mysterious stranger appeared. He was walking towards us in slow motion, and he was bald. It was Mr. Klutz. Mr. Klutz! Mr. Klutz! In case you were wondering, everybody was shouting Mr. Klutz. He stopped about 20 feet from Mayor Hubble. Klutz, said the mayor. What in blazes are you doing here? They let me out of principal camp early, Mr. Klutz said. The jig is up. Mayor, give back the gold and glitter. It doesn't belong to you. Who's going to make me, said the mayor. Ooh, everybody said. I reckon I am, said Mr. Klutz, because you're getting too big for your britches. Ooh. Smile when you say that, the mayor said. Mayor Hubble looked at Mr. Klutz. Mr. Klutz looked at Mayor Hubble. All the kids and teachers were looking at Mr. Klutz and Mayor Hubble. Nobody was saying anything. A tumbleweed rolled by. That glitter belongs to my teachers and my school. I reckon you're trying to steal it and keep it for yourself. You're lying like a rug, Klutz, said Mayor Hubble, and you're so crooked you could swallow nails and spit out corkscrews, said Mr. Klutz. Just give back the glitter and nobody gets hurt. Nothing doing, said the mayor. I'm afraid this playground ain't big enough for both of us. Ooh. Then I'm going to have to give you a whooping you'll never forget, Mayor, said Mr. Klutz, 'cause you're a bad egg. Ooh. I'm going to kick your butt so hard they're going to need a team of surgeons to remove my boots, said Mayor Hubble. Mr. Klutz and Mayor Hubble were really mad. They started walking towards each other in slow motion. They were about to fight. But you'll never believe who ran out and stood between them. It was Andrea Young, Little Miss Perfect, the human homework machine. Stop, Andrea yelled, holding up her hands. There's no need to resort to violence. Why is everybody always talking about violins? I said. Are they going to fight with musical instruments? They should fight with tubas. That would be way cool. Not violins, everybody shouted at me. Violence. Oh, I said, why didn't you say so? Suddenly Mr. Burke pushed his way to the front of the crowd. The little lady is right, he said. I say we settle this fair and square, with a duel. A duel? In case you're wondering, everybody said a duel. Guns are violent, Mr. Burke, said Andrea. I ain't talking about a duel with guns. I'm talking about a modern duel with cell phones. Chapter 11, The Duel. Mr. Burke explained the rules of the duel to everybody. The mayor and Mr. Klutz would each write their cell phone numbers on a piece of paper and swap the numbers. Then they would stand back to back. They would each walk 10 paces forward Then they would turn around, grab their cell phones, and dial each other's number as fast as possible. Whichever cell phone rang first would be the loser. The other one would get to keep all the gold and glitter. It's a deal, said Mayor Hubble. Deal, said Mr. Klutz. I'm a betting my smartphone is smarter than your smartphone. I'm a warning you, said the mayor. I'm purty quick on the dial. No namby-pamby glitter rustler can outdial me, said Mr. Klutz. Mr. Burke and told Mr. Klutz and Mayor Hubble to stand back to back. Look, their butts are talking, I whispered. Quiet, Arlo, shouted Andrea. Ready, set, go, said Mr. Burke. Mr. Klutz and Mayor Hubble started pacing away from each other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then they both spun around. Fill your hand, you bellied phone slinger, shouted Mr. Klutz. Both of them grabbed the phones off their belt loops and started punching numbers frantically. When they pointed their phones at each other and waited for one of them to ring. I know what you're thinking, Mr. Klutz said. Did you punch in 7 numbers or 6? Well, to tell you the truth, in all the excitement, I kind of lost track myself. But you got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? When Mr. Klutz's phone started playing the hokey pokey, no, he shouted. Nice try, Klutz, said the mayor, blowing on his phone. Better luck next time. Now all the gold and glitter is mine. Adios, amigos. I must skedaddle. The mayor got into the limo with a Secret Service agent and drove away. For a few seconds, nobody said anything. We were all in shock. Then Mr. Mackey stepped forward. Dag nabbit, he shouted, that scallywag done vamoosed with all our gold and glitter. If I get my hands on him, I'm going to stretch that no-good outlaw's neck. Come on, fellas, we'll head him off at the pass. Who's with me? No, thanks, said Miss Roby. I've had enough violence for the day. Violence is not the answer, said Mrs. Laney. You can't solve problems with violence, said Mr. Granite. Why is everybody always talking about violins? What in tarnation, shouted Mr. Mackey. Ain't you cowpokes going to help me chase down that varmint? Mr. Burke didn't look worried. He was leaning against the fence, picking his teeth with a toothpick. Hold your horses, partner, he said. Let the old coot go. Let him go, asked Mr. Murky. Why? What about the glitter? Glitter, said Mr. Burke. There ain't no such thing as glitter. I made that stuff up. Glitter is just shiny pieces of glass scattered around the playground. What about the gold? Asked Mr. Mackey. Painted rocks, and they ain't worth a plug nickel. So you planned all this, Mr. Burke? Asked Mr. Klutz. Why? I figured the mayor don't care a lick about balancing no budget, he said. He just wants to get rid of stuff he don't like. Art, music, schools, teachers. And I planted that gold and silver in the playground. I figured it was only a matter of time before that greedy bunco artist would try to snatch it. The cops will pick him up soon enough. Well, that's pretty much what happened. The police tracked Mayor Hubble down and took him to jail. Maybe he'll be there for the rest of his life. Maybe we'll raise enough money to bring back art and music programs. Maybe all the men will shave off their beards and stop saying yeehaw. Maybe everybody will stop talking about violins. Maybe they'll turn the water fountains back on and put toilet paper in the bathrooms again. Maybe we'll get the monkey bars back from rent-a-monkey bars. Maybe the teachers will get to keep the hot tub that isn't in the teacher's lounge. Maybe Mr. Klutz and Mr. Burke will fight on the seesaws. Maybe I'll become principal and toast marshmallows. Maybe cannibal zombies will come out of the Underground Railroad and eat our brains. Maybe there will be a TV channel that shows nothing but stuff being blown up all day. Maybe they'll be able to fill the big hole in the playground. But it won't be easy, partner. The end.